We have one of those big, if true, type of announcements. Yesterday, President Joe Biden announced that there will be enough vaccine supply for every adult in the United States to get a coronavirus vaccine by the end of May. Now, there will be enough supply and we will have the resources to inject every dose, or two different things. But we'll talk about that. Let's look at the announcement from Joe Biden made yesterday afternoon.
We're now on track to have enough vaccine supply for every adult in America by the end of May. Let me say that again. When we came into office, the prior administration had contracted for not nearly enough vaccine to cover adults in America. We rectified that. About 3 weeks ago, we were able to say that we'll have enough vaccine supply for adults by the end of July. And I'm pleased to announce today, as a consequence of the stepped-up process that I've ordered and just outlined, this country will have enough vaccine supply, I'll say it again, for every adult in America by the end of May. By the end of May. That's progress, important progress. But it's not enough to have the vaccine supply. We need vaccinators, people to put the shots in people's arms.
So, what exactly does this mean? There will be enough vaccine doses for every adult to get vaccinated. Is this possible? Is it an overpromise? There's a number of different considerations here, and let's just kind of think it through. Apply the sniff test to it. First of all, remember that right now, every American is mostly every adult. Two of the vaccines are for 18 plus, currently authorized for 18 years of age and older individuals. The other is for 16 plus. So roughly, when we say every American, right now we mean every eligible American, which is somewhere between 260 and 266. Let's call it 265 million people if we start with those eligible age-wise for the vaccine. So we're starting with 265. Then we look at, as of today, March 3rd, what is the number of people who are vaccinated. In other words, we start with the 265. How many are all set and we can remove from that? Well, 26 million people got both doses. So that drops us from 265 to 239 million eligible Americans left to vaccinate. Of the 239 million that are left, an additional 25 and a half, call it 26 million, have one dose from the vaccines that need two doses. So we need to get those 26 million people to 100% vaccination. We need another 26 million doses. So then we will have 213 million people left to vaccinate in the remainder of March, April, and May. 213 million people in what is roughly 89 days. That's a big stretch, but there's more considerations here. Joe Biden is saying not that we will vaccinate every eligible American by the end of May. He's saying we will have enough vaccines by the end of May, and it could take time from vaccine availability to actual injection. So that's one aspect of this. We also have to probably take off the top that right now, about 25% of adults don't want the vaccine. That's the latest number. It's been declining over time. More and more people want the vaccine over time. But in reality, it's not really 213 million people left to vaccinate. It's more like 198 million when you account for those who, as of right now, say that they don't want it. So the question becomes, will there be doses for 198 million people to be vaccinated by the end of May, even if it takes them a little longer to get vaccinated? In theory, yes, it's not crazy to think that that's a number that's going to be available. Moderna and Pfizer continue to say they will deliver enough together to cover 200 million Americans by the end of May. That would be 400 million doses, but that includes December, January, February. It includes what they've already done. And then Johnson & Johnson, the recently approved third vaccine, which is a one-dose vaccine, they had contracted to deliver 87 million vaccines by the end of May. Remember, with being one dose, 87 million vaccines is enough for 87 million people, but it looks like J&J is going to fall short. But there's some breathing room. Even if Johnson & Johnson does only a part of the 87 million they contracted to do, it's quite plausible that you will have enough vaccines for every eligible American who wants a vaccine by the end of May. As I said earlier this week, every indication, if you look at both what the Biden administration is claiming and what the pharmaceutical companies are claiming, every indication is that the challenge as we get into April, and certainly it may even start to be a challenge in March, certainly by the end of April and definitively by May, the challenge will be, do we have enough infrastructure to put the vaccines into arms? Because the amount of new doses we're going to have in the next 80 days, even in the next 40 days, is well beyond what we currently are able to inject. We're going to need more vaccination sites, which are being launched. We're going to need more vaccinators who are being hired. And we may be needing to run some of these larger vaccination sites 24/7 to make this happen. Having enough vaccines by May 31st is great. If you can't actually inject them for 4 months, then it's sort of like, well, it's actually going to be 4 more months. Now, one important thing to know, and this may increase the number of people that want the vaccine, the CDC is expected to announce tomorrow, Thursday, March 4th, that it's okay. They're going to give a go-ahead for vaccinated people to gather indoors in small groups without masks. This may encourage more people to want the vaccine, and it may lower the vaccine hesitancy. Remember, at one point, 60% didn't want the vaccine. That was down to 50, 40, 33. Now it's down to about 25. The CDC saying, hey, we've determined these vaccines are effective enough that vaccinated people, groups of exclusively vaccinated people, small groups indoors without masks are okay. That will likely encourage more people to say, I want the vaccine. Now, at the same time, the counter would be, if you care what the CDC says, you probably already want the vaccine. You're already in the group of people that want it. So maybe it won't make that big of a difference. I don't know if the CDC is going to convince too many anti-vaxxers that at this late stage still don't want the vaccine, but it's something. People who have been fully vaccinated against COVID-19 will be cleared to gather in small groups without masks. Dr. Anthony Fauci said yesterday, quote, I use the example of a daughter coming in from out of town who is doubly vaccinated and a husband and wife doubly vaccinated and maybe a next door neighbor who you know are doubly vaccinated. Small gatherings in the home of people, I think you can clearly feel that the relative risk is so low that you would not have to wear a mask, that you could have a good social gathering within the home. That is very good news. That is very optimistic news, and I find it completely reasonable. Now, it goes without saying that if this new vaccine timeline is accurate, we are, again, I want to be realistically optimistic based on what we're being told. We are looking at a potentially very good summer, all else being equal, assuming we don't have significant variant escape from the vaccines and all of the things that we're watching. We're potentially looking at a pretty solid summer, and we will continue to cover it. If you are anything like me, you probably aren't thrilled with the idea of going into a doctor's office right now. And thankfully, there's a practical and affordable way to take control of your health and get personalized care from the comfort of your home. It's a service called SteadyMD. They're one of our sponsors. You take a quiz, you get matched with a licensed primary care physician who understands your health needs. You have a 1-hour video call with your new doctor. You establish a meaningful relationship with them. And after that, your doctor is available to you anytime by text, phone, or video chat. This is not a random doctor on call. Each doctor at SteadyMD has a limited number of patients, so they actually have time to listen to you. You get the personal attention that you deserve. They can do almost everything an in-person doctor can do: perform medical evaluations, talk to you about health concerns, send prescriptions to your home or local pharmacy, and anything they can't do online, they'll quickly set you up with an in-person provider to do, things like blood tests, as an example. You don't need insurance. It's only $99 a month with no other fees or copays. There are so many practical advantages to using SteadyMD for primary care, and it's also so much more affordable. Go to steadymd.com/Pakman to take the free quiz, see which doctor is right for you. I took their quiz. They matched me with a doctor who specializes in my particular health needs and situation. The doctor they gave me is a really perfect fit for me and my medical needs. There's no risk, no commitment to get started. just click the link right underneath this video.